I think one of the big fallacies of the modern quote unquote mental health movement is that somehow our minds and our bodies are divorced from each other. Mm-hmm. That you can have quote unquote mental health and completely disregard your body. It's just not true.
The Big Silence, empowering personal experiences, inspiring compassion, and healing lives. We are no longer silent. We are here.
The Big Silence. The Big Silence.
Welcome back to the Big Silence podcast. Your host, Karena, here. I am so happy you're here to join me for this conversation this week. It's a good one. And if you have anxiety, Dr. John Delony wants you to know it's not your fault. Thank you, Dr. John Delony. We live in a world that constantly threatens our nervous system, and in this episode, we unpack how we start healing. Dr. Delony is a two-time #1 national best-selling author and the host of the Dr. John Delony Show. This is a really fun show. I found him through his podcast where he does live calls with guests and helps them walk through their problems. So make sure you check out that show. With 2 PhDs and over 20 years of experience in counseling, crisis response, and higher education, he has dedicated his life to helping people navigate through decisions, improve their relationships, and understand they are worth being well. And he's also pretty cool. In our conversation, Dr. Delony opens up about the practices he's used to manage stress. As the dean of students at multiple universities, we dive deep into some of the biggest challenges people face today, from feeling overwhelmed by anxiety to navigating relationships as we grow and evolve. Dr. Delony provides the tools for healthy communication, tips for avoiding the trap of victim identity, and insights on how financial stress can impact our mental health. Don't forget to check out his latest book, Building a Non-Anxious Life. And I just want to say we finished. You have to listen until the end of this podcast because he asked me what my favorite song was that I would want to play at my funeral. I was like, oh, and he literally has the song in his will. So listen till the end to hear what that is. And then I was like struggling with that. And so when I was done with the podcast, it came to my mind that obviously it's my karaoke song, because the song I chose, if you listen till the end, is actually like a really sad song and it reminds me of my mom. I want people to leave feeling good. And if you're my friend and you know me, it's What's Up by Four Non Blondes. Dr. Delony, this is for you. 43 years and my life is still trying to get up that great big hill of hope for a destination. I realized quickly when I knew I should, the world was made up of this brotherhood of man, for whatever that means. And so I cry sometimes when I'm lying in bed just to get it all out what's in my head. And I'm feeling a little peculiar. And so I wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream from the top of my lungs, what's going on? If you're still here and you haven't hung up on this podcast, thank you for allowing me my karaoke moment. Enjoy the pod, share it with someone that you love who needs to hear it. And always, please comment, even a review on Apple Podcasts. The more reviews, the higher the podcast gets and the better guests we get for you. Love you. See you on the other side. Welcome to the Big Silence, Dr. John Delony. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing so good. How about you?
I'm great. We were just talking. I'm just over here sweating in Texas, but you know,
that's my. I don't get to visit Texas very often. That was my home. That's where I grew up and was born and raised for most of my life. And it's good to talk to a fellow Texan now.
Yeah. Why'd you move to Nashville?
This work. There's two things about Nashville that's incredible. Mm-hmm. One, being a lifelong Texan, there was this weird thing where water falls from the sky. They call it rain. It was amazing. And that led to these giant green things called trees that are everywhere out here in Middle Tennessee. So, no, we moved out. I took a job at a university here. I was at Texas Tech University there in Texas. And then I ended up at Belmont here in Nashville. And we've loved it.
Yeah. So I came across you through your podcast, the John Delony Show. And actually, Bobby, who you just met, was walking through a room and it was like your intro that's like rock and roll. And he's like, "What are you listening to?" And so it was super cool podcast. I love how you have people call in and they share their stories and you try to walk them through the process of how to walk through what they're going through and with advice. And, typically people learn that they already have the answer inside of them. So it's really great. But so before you became who you are today with all of your books, podcast, speaking, where were you? You're at Texas Tech in Texas teaching?
Yeah, I was just a nerd. I was a student affairs guy. So I did teach graduate school as an adjunct instructor, but yeah, my day-to-day job was as a dean of students and or as some dean of students role. I was the dean of students at the law school there at Texas Tech University, but I was the dean of students here at Belmont. And that job is predominantly sitting with people when their world is blown up, whether it's a conduct issue or surviving sexual assaults or somebody's passed away or somebody's struggling with suicidal ideation or students with learning exceptionalities and special needs and trying to navigate those 504 ADA systems and all that, just problem solving for young people. And so that's been the majority of my career at multiple universities. And I think the big takeaway there, and in Texas, also in Lubbock, I was also moonlighting with the police department as a crisis response guy. So I drive around with police officers and help with death notifications and help people figure out how to get resources. That's why I love what your organization does, like help people get like the care the next day. Like if they can't afford counseling, they can't afford support. So, but if I look back, the meta over the last 20 years or so has been sitting with hurting people, trying to figure out what's the next right move.
So why is that? Why did you pursue a career in mental health and become a voice for people's emotions?
I don't know. My dad was a hostage negotiator for the SWAT team, and he was a homicide detective for Houston Police Department. I think so. I have these very vivid memories of my dad putting on his bulletproof vest and going in, like if there was a hostage situation or somebody was on top of a building threatening to jump or had a bomb, he went in. And so just as a kid, you just think you do what your dad does kind of thing, or you do what your mom does. And then the other side of it is my mom was raised in a faith community that said that women shouldn't be in the work, like had no business going to college. They need to go home and raise family. And so she at 42 took her first community college class, and then she went to another class and then another class. And then she graduated from University of Houston with her PhD at age 57.
Wow. That's
And
so cool.
then she became she got tenured as a mythology professor at 63, and she's in her early 70s. And last year she retired with her last semester teaching overseas at Oxford. So I had the two metas I had are, if there's a problem, you go in. That's where the solution is. And that's where you can help people. And then the second lesson I just was in the air I breathed growing up was, there's no such thing as too old. There's no such thing as you can't change your story. There's no such thing as I can't. You just got to go figure it out and go do it. And of course you need a bunch of support and help and care. But so it's just always been show up. I remember calling my dad one night after a really gnarly situation. Where someone had passed away. And I called my dad, which is rare for me as an adult, asking for help. And I said, "Hey Dad, what do you do when you figure out your best skill on planet Earth is sitting with people and giving them the worst possible news?" I just had to tell a mom that her son had died. And he got real quiet and he said, "You'd be really grateful that you found your thing, and then you better be real good at it. And so you can honor those people." But anyway, so that's kind of how it played itself out. But I think I grew up with it, and then it just became the next right thing to do.
Yeah, it seems like it. And your job, your career, and your passion, do you personally ever take in some of that energy and those emotions? And how do you move through that for yourself? Because, even I have discussions all day long, not all day long like you, but often very tough discussions. And I've dealt with grief and death. And how do you manage stress with that?
Yeah, that's a great. I think a couple things. One is I have to have a process, and I wish you could bottle that up and say there's a process for everyone, but there's just not.
Yeah.
What I have to know is, for a living, I hold people's bricks for them. And if I take that brick and put it in my backpack and decide to carry it, actually who's going to carry it is my wife and my kids and my community. And so it's my job to make sure I have a process. For me, that's exercise. For me, that is going to see a counselor. For me, that's having a group of men that I hang out with just to go to punk rock shows. I'm too old to be getting in mosh pits, and I still go. Or going to the comedy club right down the street from my house. It's having a process. I'm pretty intertwined with my faith community, so it's a big deal to me to have a process, knowing that I can't carry all this. And then over the past few years, I had no social media when I started this. I was just a bumbling dean of students. I had nothing. I had no idea about any of this ecosystem at all. And so I've also learned in the past 4 years, I can't hold it all. It's too big. I can't hold 1 million people happy with me. I can't hold 1 million people mad at me. I can't hold in one direct message, you're the greatest person, you saved my life, and the next one, you're the worst person who ever lived. I can't hold it. And so coming to terms with my limitations has been a really important part of entering into this space on such a huge scale.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, as a man too, and I think that when you mentioned social groups for men, are there any suggestions? Because I do think a lot of men have trouble as we get older, and women, but especially men, making
Men
a
are
social.
the worst. Yeah.
How do you get out there? I mean, obviously your church, but and maybe running groups. I don't know.
Yeah. So the way I've framed it is, and again, this is over gendered and over generalized, right? But men get siphoned off into groups at a very early age. You're the kids who play sports, or you're the kids who don't play sports. You're the kids in choir, or you're the kids on the football team. Or you're the kid who plays guitar, or you're the kid who plays video games nowadays. And so your community, your tribe, as Junger says, like, that just is. And there's a reason that 40-year-old guys get together with their old high school friends and they still talk about the same plays from the same football games, because that was the last time they were a part of something bigger than themselves. And so I think the choir concert or the theater performance. And so I think what's incumbent on us, the same as it was for my grandparents, who they gave cigarettes to when they were young kids.
What?
Because it calmed them down, right?
No way.
They were amazing. They calmed all the kids down. It became important for my grandparents when they learned differently. We have to stop smoking. It's going to kill us. And similarly, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50-year-old men have to understand that when their body recognizes that they're lonely, they will do one of two things. They will melt their romantic partner with all of it. I hear all over the country, wives become trash bins for their husbands. So all they got. So they tell them all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, all the bad stuff, all the work gossip, all the everything, all the political news, and nobody can carry that.
Yeah.
They have to go make friends. And I'm telling you right now, it's the most awkward, weird thing. And so I just sent out 2 text messages over the weekend to 2 guys. And I said, hey, I want to put together my own old man punk rock group. Are y'all in? Both of them said, I've got too much going on in my life. I'm out. And I'm going to tell you, it made me sad.
You're
I'm
like putting
mid-40s.
yourself out there.
I did. But here's the thing. I have to go be weird. And I got to give it a shot. And they said no, not because I'm not fun or cool. They've got young kids. They've got lives. So everybody's got their thing. That's cool. I got to go first. And I know at the end of the day, I have to be intentional about having a group of men that I hang out with, that I do stuff with.
Yeah. Do you have kids?
I like to. Yes, I've got a 14-year-old and 8-year-old.
Okay.
I do my best to bring my kids with me because I want them to have a picture of men in their lives having friends. And that's important too. So it's awkward and it's weird and it's uncomfortable, and it just is what you got to do. There's just not a way around it. So go first, be weird, invite people over to your house.
Hey.
Here's another thing. I've had 2 books be real successful, and so my economics situation has changed over the last few years. Now I just buy 2 or 3 tickets when I want to go to a concert, and I invite a couple of buddies, and if they can't go because of finances, you're coming. I got a ticket. Let's go. And if they can Venmo me when it's over, great. But I'm in a position now where I'd rather have the experience with a couple of friends. Because when I'm 60, I'm not going to be, that guy didn't have $40 or whatever. I'm going to be so glad that I was way too old with another way too old guy and we got in the mosh pit again, right? I'm looking forward to that. So it's finding ways where you can just figure it out and let's go do it.
Yeah, I just did that. I just bought 4 dashboard confessional tickets.
No way, he lives right down the street.
Does he?
Here.
Oh my God. I haven't been to a concert since I was like 7. Oh, no, probably I was in LA. So I was probably like 19 or 20. I'm so excited. And I called my friend that I went to that concert with, and I was like, come out to Austin. I'll fly you out. She's like, but I can't. I was like, I got you a ticket. And she's like, I can't. I have my daughter that weekend. I was like, damn, I tried.
Hey, you know what? She can come. And hey, those concerts are like church, man. Those are sing-alongs. Those are good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He puts it on. That's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah. So I want to shift a little bit to the topic of anxiety, because I feel like the world is the most anxious and chronically anxious. And you have your latest book, right, is Building a Non-Anxious World, or Anxious Life. Sorry, Building a Non-Anxious Life. And you said, I've heard you say, anxiety is a friend. Maybe society is telling us we're wrong.
Yeah, so the anxiety a friend line actually comes from the great Dr. Wendy Suzuki at NYU. There is, so I like to think of it like a bell curve. There are people with actual significant mental illness when it comes to anxiety disruption, right? But I think for the vast majority of us, the question we've never asked ourselves is, A, how do we all get so anxious all at the same time in such a sliver of history when we have so much? We have nobody's, I don't say nobody, but food insecurity is much lower. You and I were just talking about air conditioning in Texas when it's 150 degrees outside in the summer. Like, we have a lot. What happened? Why is our bodies ringing these alarm systems off the hook? And the second question I don't think we're asking ourselves is, what kind of world have we created that our bodies keep all telling us that we're not safe, that it's detecting threats everywhere? And so I like to think of, I like the way Dr. Suzuki says anxiety can be considered a friend. It's an alarm system. It's just letting you know, hey, I've detected something in your world that is, you're not safe. And so then I begin to look around and say, man, my wife is healthy, my kids are healthy, my parents are still married after 60 years. Like, what in the world is not safe? And when you begin to peel those layers back, it gets pretty gnarly pretty quick. In the world that we call normal is wildly unsafe. And so I don't think our bodies, for the most part, I don't think they're broken. I don't think there's something wrong with them. I think they're actually working exactly as they were designed. And the real challenging question is, man, how do we recreate a world that our bodies are actually designed to live in and not the opposite?
What's your answer, God? Like, tell us. How do we do it?
Well, I mean, I think we were just talking about it. Like, I think most of us run through our lives not living in reality. And what I mean by that is, here's a good example. I was having dinner, this is a few years ago now, with somebody whose net worth is so much greater than mine. I could never fathom. I mean, it was obnoxious, just silly. It's one of those, and there's a particular swagger that those type of folks often have. Not everybody, but sometimes. And he's asking me, like, okay, so what do you do? Like, and I was trying to explain, I travel around and I do a lot of speaking and I meet with a lot of companies and business. My expertise is sitting with business leaders behind closed doors when their worlds are falling apart. And I've got this show, and he says, I would never hire you to come talk to my business. And I said, why? And he goes, you don't know anything about, I don't remember what his business was, but marketing and whatever. And I said, I wouldn't talk to you about marketing. And he said, well, what would you talk to us about? And I was just fishing and being kind of a smart aleck, but I said, the fact that your kids don't like you, and that when your kids walk in the front door, or when you walk in the front door, your kids put their heads back in their phones and they walk in the room and shut the door, and you tell yourself it's just because they're teenagers and that's just what they do. But there's something broken between the two of you. And he smiled real big and he goes, all right, you got my attention, right? So there's this is owning reality. What is the state of your marriage? Period. And most people are sitting on a couch 2 inches apart from each other, but 2,000 miles away, living in parallel lives. What is your relationship with your kids? Or is your home a place they actually want to come home to? What's your health? I love the fitness. Like, what is the state of the physical body that you have? What's your emotional and psychological state? Here's one that we don't talk about a lot. If your body understands that if you get fired, if you lose your job, these days pretty much at whim, right? You and I both are in right for work states. Mm-hmm. If you and I had a job where we clock in, we can walk in at any day, at any time, and be let go with zero to none explanation. Your body would be failing you if you had a mortgage and 2 car payments and you had 6 credit cards, because your body would know, your amygdala would know, if you get fired, we lose our house, we lose our cars, we lose our food, we lose everything. Yeah. It would be failing you if it let you sleep all night. It would be failing you if it didn't spin thoughts up the second you put your phone down when you put your head on your pillow. It'd be failing you if it let you have deep, intimate, romantic encounters with your partner in the middle, like in late in the evening. It's not time for sex. It's not time for sleep. It's time to not die. We're at war here, right? We've created the loneliest generation in human history, and so it's not going. I love technology. I love air conditioning. I love leather seats. I love the whole thing. I love all of it. I love being able to text my friends. But it's asking myself, all right, where am I truly? Do I have relationships that keep me safe? What's the state of my financial reality? And not that I need some government official to come solve this problem for me, but I need to live in the realities of the world I've created or that has been dropped in my lap. I have to begin to be a steward of my body. And so we can just keep going, but I've got to be a steward of my spiritual life, right?
Well, I have a question
beginning to go ahead.
About something you said. Well, our body keeps the score, and sometimes there's anxiety where we're thinking about something that hasn't happened, but sometimes there's instinct, and we're going back to someone losing their job, and I've been in a position where I've had to let people go, and they're like, I knew it was coming. I've been in positions where I knew certain things were going to happen, and then I have anxiety about that, but my body sensed it, and then it happened. So
absolutely.
That.
But so here's the catch. So 15 years ago, maybe 16 now, my wife and I decided, let's not owe anybody any money. And so I was the dean of students at the law school at Texas Tech University, an amazing job surrounded by amazing colleagues. And not because I'm a hero at all, right? But because I had a larger picture in mind. I drove a $3,500 old F-150, not the cool kind, the embarrassing kind that smelled like gas fumes inside of it. And my wife drove a Corolla, an older Corolla, like 20-year-old Corolla. Corollas are amazing cars. The old F-150 is amazing. It's fine. But here's the deal. Had we gone to a car dealership in the city where we lived in West Texas, they would have given us any car on the lot because we could qualify for this payment. But the goal was, I want to, if we get called in and I get called in and let go, I want that to be annoying. I don't want that to be catastrophic. And so it was a 15-year chiseling away at these student loans and at these car payments and yada, yada. So that when that person has to call me and they're weeping too, and they're like, hey, I've got to let you go. Then I go home and then we exhale and then we can make an intelligent choice about what happens next. Not, oh my gosh, we're going to lose our home, right?
That is so smart because of the pressures in society to have these nice things when you live outside of your means can cause so much chronic stress and then anxiety, and you're constantly thinking of that. So did you feel when you were chipping away at your college loans and you were driving the F-150 and the Corolla, were you at peace and happy and joyful? Was stress less?
Yes and no. There was some embarrassment. And this is me being honest. It wasn't, I didn't like it. I didn't like it when my students would come in their Lexus in the law school parking lot and laugh at me. I mean, I didn't like it.
So there's
but it was, I had a larger picture in mind. What I can tell you now on the other side is, it's I call it a sleep tax. I had no idea. how deep you can sleep when your body knows they can't take your house from you, when your body knows they can't take your car from you. And again, I'm not super bajillionaire, trust me. But a few years ago, we had an air conditioner go out. The most annoying part of that was me and my wife fighting over who had to call the repairman, like the air conditioner people, not the, oh my gosh, like we
You're
can't
gonna
do
sweat.
this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but again, that was 15, almost 2 decades in the making. Where I work here, they did a study on 10,000 millionaires. You know what the number 3 class of millionaires in the U.S. was?
No. What?
Teachers.
Oh.
Teachers. And there was some debate over, well, teachers are good at lesson planning, so they can make a long-term plan and stick with it on a day-by-day basis. There's some merit to that. Actually, my wife was a teacher and was a teacher for most of our marriage before she became a college professor. My wife made peace with a Corolla life. And what I mean by that is she knew the job she was taking and the service to her local community and what that was going to pay. And so she just looked at the math and said, okay, cool. Then I'll drive this used car for 30 years. I'll get the car that will last. But there wasn't this, man, I really wish I could have a Suburban or a Yukon or what, like all these cooler things, because she had a bigger purpose in mind and she made peace with it. And so there was something about just exhaling and saying, okay, this is the reality. I've chosen to be fill in the blank, and I'm going to make peace with the world I've chosen for myself. And there are millions and millions and millions and millions of people that have not chosen the world they've been dropped into. The life has happened to them, whether it's abuse or whether it's parents who are struggling or whatever. And this can sound trite. My one of the reasons I wrote the Building an Anxious Life book was my utter frustration at the ecosystem, if we will, classifies people as the worst thing that ever happened to them, or as their label. And what it says is, this is all you're ever going to be. You're a this. So you just go over to the corner and pat you on the head, and we'll take care of you because you're not enough. And I just reject that. I think people are strong. I think they're resilient. I think communities band together and do amazing things. And I just can't pat somebody on the head and say, you're never going to be enough because of what happened to you. And so that means I want to call you into something bigger.
That actually, I had a random question that I might have asked you, but this might be a place it fits. I was, violence being very major, and youth and violence, and, different neighborhoods that you have access to. But why do you think people become criminals? And is there a mind shift that one who is slightly aware can get themselves out and back to safety before going too far, make that shift instead of, I guess how I correlate this is like not being that victim role and having whatever their family, their abuse as a child, and being like, well, this is it. This is identifying me. So I'm going to just start making bad decision after bad decision.
Well, there's kind of several questions there. I think one of to address the violence question, I mean, I think there's so many, I would say the literature is not settled there. What I would say is I think people have an innate need for one of their core needs, as per the great William Glasser says, one of the core needs everyone has is power. Where do I have autonomy? Where do I have decision making? And if you take away adults who love and care for you and let you anchor in where you're safe, your nervous system can rest. You will seek it. You'll go get it. And you'll get it from people who may not have your best interests in heart. And you're going to seek power in those situations. And sometimes power can be manipulative, and sometimes power can be, I'm a great athlete. Sometimes power can be, I'm really, really smart. And sometimes power can be, I can knock you down. And it's much easier to knock somebody down than it is to build something. And so if you don't have that loving support, and you don't have adults in your life, parents, guardians, or teachers, or mentors, or counselors, if you don't have parents that believe in you and say, I see you and I love you, knocking everyone else down is a way to level the field around you. And it becomes an addictive option. In terms of getting out of that, I think we conflate some of the things I was just saying about we have choices. Kids don't.
Yeah.
Kids go to school where they have to go to where they're told they're going to go to school. And kids will often do whatever it takes to stay safe, to have some sort of somebody see them and say, I see all of you. And they'll burn something down. They will love you. I remember one of my practicum advisors telling me, we left a room. We were working with abused kids, and we just doing intakes, and we left a room, And he said, all right, so what do you think? And I said, well, this person is showing this, and this signs. And I said, but this one's going to be all right. And he said, why? And I rattled off all the good things this kid was doing. And he looked at me and said, John, make no mistake, straight A's can be a trauma response too.
Mm-hmm.
And they will make sure the whole world smiles, and you know what I mean? Like they will go to the ends of the earth to make sure everybody else sees how safe and great they are. So all I'd say is kids need adults that see them and love them and give them, I love the way Dr. Becky Kennedy says it, just a sturdiness, a presence. You're anchored in.
Yeah.
And absent that, kids often need to survive. I think it's when they get to be adults and they look up and the world says, oh, this happened to you when you were a kid. Yeah, that's all you're ever going to be. You have a this or you're a this. And, oh, you made some of those decisions when you were trying to survive in high school. Man, you're one of those. And it just categorizes you and casts you away. And I reject that with all my soul. I think kids do what they got to do to survive. Then they become adults and they need a world that says, we see you and we forgive you. Let's go on about the next thing. Or we see you and we love you. Let's go on about the next thing.
Yeah, I've done some work with my friend Jewel. She has the Inspiring Children Foundation, and we'll put it in the show links here because I've firsthand seen what they do with these kids in Vegas and take them, they're homeless, they have abusive parents, and they provide housing, education, they teach emotional intelligence, meditation, fitness, getting in nature. It's the most beautiful program when you go to their school. I'm like, wow, and the kids share their stories. I've heard, from drug dealing to suicide attempts to going to Harvard and Cornell. And it's just, the change that I see there is just, it's inspiring.
And here's what's cool. What you'll find across programs, underneath the programmatic efforts like the emotional regulation teaching and the let's hear your story and all those, the art classes and the physical fitness, all that stuff is incredible and good for your mind and your body and your soul and your spirit, all of it. Underneath those is when kids get taken out of chaotic, unsafe, violent, abusive situations and placed with caring, sturdy, loving adults that say, I see you, I expect more of you, and I believe you can. Here's an algebra book. Let's go make this thing happen. And you watch kids, their nervous systems go, whew,
yeah,
right? And they have this thing that they've never had, which is peace. Yeah. And then they come alive. It's amazing.
It is.
And then you can teach them on top of that. But it's really staggering if you give children emotionally regulated adults. It's powerful.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift. Let's see. Emotionally regulated adults. Let's talk relationships, marriages. How do we become emotionally regulated adults?
Turn the news off. That's how you do that. Turn the news off.
Bobby's dad comes in. He's retired and he visits us a lot. And he's from Long Island. And he loves watching the news every morning. And then Bobby's picked up this habit. The past 3 days, we wake up and he turns the news on. I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, what is this? They're telling happy stories. I was like, go to Fox. I was like, no, but I was like, change it. And I was joking. I'm like, why are we watching the news every morning? But,
no, it's wild. Somebody asked me during COVID, so I have this rule that if I get surprised in a media hit, that I'm just gonna answer from my guts, right? I'm just gonna answer as truthfully as I can if I don't have a prepped answer kind of thing. Yeah. And somebody said, are these masks ruin kids for the next however many years? And I wasn't expecting that question. And I said something along the lines of, the masks are not good. Kids are incredibly resilient when they're around regulated adults. So I believe they're going to be okay there. It's been a mess and it's going to be tough for them to come back from that, but I think they can. I said, what I think is 100-year screw up on our part is kids have been trapped in homes with raged out, angry, out of control, news absorbed adults. And that's a generation of dysregulated nervous systems. It's just chaos.
Yeah.
And that to me is a much bigger, scarier thing because adults went bananas. They went limbic, man. They just went bonkers.
Yeah. So earlier you were talking about how a couple can be sitting next to each other, inches away, both scrolling on their phones, and actually be thousands of miles away. So what are the foundations of a strong, emotionally regulated relationship?
Oh, man. I think we can reverse engineer that question. I think at the beginning and end of every romantic relationship, a marriage is, do you see all of me and do you still love me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know all of me and do you still love me? And I think I've been with the same person largely for 25 years. And I just recently, this year, January, I asked her to make me a syllabus. We're two old college professors, so we're nerds. But I said, make me a syllabus of you. I don't even know what you read anymore. I don't know what podcast you're listening to. I don't even know where you stand theology on things. You're like, make me a syllabus of you. Give me some books, give me some podcasts, give me some music, and I want to get caught up on my wife.
Mm-hmm.
1 month went by. I think it was into March. And I was like, hey, you never sent me the syllabus. And she said, she laughed. She goes, I wish you'd asked me to do something like really weird because this is super scary. And I said, scary? What are you talking about? And she got serious and she said, I'm afraid you're going to read this and then you're not going to like me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we've made humans together, right? We've built things together. And that question still comes up to you now that you know all of me. Do you still like me? And so I said, I might not like the books, I may not like the music, but I'll always like you. So I think going back to ultimately the safest, healthiest place to people that are fully in is I see you and I still love you. And that means I have to begin and end all of our interactions with curiosity, not judgment. Because you can't be fully seen if you know that person's going to judge you and have an opinion on it and beat you up for. So you have to lead with curiosity. And then we have to ask ourselves, what do we want this home to feel like? And let's do the things that we can do to reverse engineer so that we create this world that we want to create. It's just understanding that we're co-creating whatever happens next.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing adventure to go on with somebody.
Yeah. I mean, so you've been with your wife 25 years. I've been with Bobby 12 years together, 8 years married. And I want to talk about handling change and as we evolve. You know, Bobby always says to me, he's like, when I met you, you were surfing, you were downhill mountain biking, snowboard, badass, this. He's like, now you don't. I'm like, no, I love hiking and going on to yoga and lifting weights. So it's like, he's like, you're so boring now. I'm like, I actually want to not break a bone anymore.
There you go. Yeah.
I want to I want to live. Yeah. Don't take as much. I was like, I've changed. I don't read the same books as I did back then. I mean, you know, different changes in music, different ways. Fun is different. I don't do drugs anymore. Yeah. I'm not
Extra
that girl.
boo.
Oh yeah. So about navigating change and especially maybe children coming into the relationship and how that dynamic changes things as well.
Yeah, so the great Esther Perel says, and I'll butcher the quote, but most adults have 4 or 5 great and powerful and passionate loves in their adult lifetime. Mm. If you work really hard, it can be with the same person. Mm. And so I was not the best guy to be with the first 10 years or so we were married because of 2 main reasons. Mm-hmm. I kept asking the question, when are we going to get back to ... to a place that no longer existed. The second thing is I kept trying to drag the past into the future all the time. I tried to recreate it. And so, you can't, it's over, it's gone. It was a time and it was awesome, but now is a different kind of awesome that we can create. We just have to understand that we have autonomy to make something different now. And so, what I found is the couples that survive, and not only survive, but do amazing, are able to say, that was amazing. That was awesome. It was great. Remember when we used to just go, we had no kids, we had a little bit of money, we'd have sex whenever we wanted, wherever we wanted. We could just travel and go do weird stuff and then sleep in one sleeping bag in the woods. And then we just go to work on Monday. Like, remember that? Yes, that was awesome. Yeah. It was. And you forget the ticks and you forget like all of the you forget all the bad stuff.
All the mosquitoes.
That was awesome.
And all that. Yep.
Yeah. You forget that. And then it's easy to have a kid. You both have jobs because it's so expensive to live these days. Your insurance company drops you for no reason. Like, it's easy to get caught up in that world and to think back to remember when. Mm-hmm. The challenge is saying, okay, that was over. It was awesome. It's over. we get to create a different kind of awesome now. And what does that mean? Where do we find that nexus of safety? Are you still going to be a person of integrity? Are you still going to show up when I call? Are you still going to be that person? And sensuality, adventure, play. Okay, so you don't surf anymore. Great. What was it about the surfing? He'll probably say, there was something about having, like you said, a badass, kind of crazy, kind of like you never know what I'm going to get, kind of. Okay, where can she come alive in a house with 3 kids, a foundation, a podcast, of this? All right, where can we inject that here? And that's when you get creativity, and that's when you invent and you get innovative. And that adventure I've come to love. And so this year, in June-ish, my wife and I sat down. We map it out. We've never been married and had a high school kid because my son's 14 and went to high school. High school was the greatest 4 years of my life. And also, there were 4 really traumatic years for me. My wife hated every second of high school. So our nervous system, we have little GPS pins that are starting to sound the alarms. We're in high school, football games. Oh my gosh. And then my son comes in and his shirt isn't just right. And I'm like, remember that time you got made fun of? Remember that time a guy shoved you? And I got to know that. And then we get to decide, all right, what kind of great marriage do we want to have with a high school kid now? And we get to co-create what happens next. And so we're going to be curious about it. And we're going to practice things and we're going to try things. And some things will be amazing and some will be a disaster. And I've come to love finding who this amazing woman I'm married to is becoming now, because she is radically different from who I got married to. Yeah. And thank God I'm different too. Right. And by the way, I was a hot-headed mess. Yeah. And just a hot-headed mess. Something happened recently. And my wife, as we got back in the car, she put her hand on my chest and she was like, that was old John. And it was kind of a mix of, I thought he was long gone and kind of, it's good to see him again. I remember he was kind of cute, right? It was this, It was this mix, and nothing bad happened or anything, but I was like, where did he come? Like, it was just, right? He emerged. And so, and that happens in the good and the negative. But all I have to say is I have just found great peace in saying, okay, we're both getting older. We're both reading new things. We're learning new things. We're having experiences. Our bodies are reminding us of old things. Cool. I can't wait to have breakfast with you on Saturday to find out where you are now. Yeah, and as long as we're anchored into the same values, our beliefs are going to be all over the place. And I love that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I assume you have the same values of when you were together or first got together. And things, other things can change, but that core person is still there.
Yeah, so it's I think there's a strong differentiation between values and beliefs. Yeah. The reason I listen to podcasts, the reasons I check out The Big Silence, the reason I read books is because I want my beliefs to change. And I think we have a bad habit in this current media ecosystem. We just live in echo chambers. And so we just have what we believe reinforced. That just seems like such a weird waste of your life to just constantly be surrounded by people that go, yeah. Like, it just feels boring.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I like to learn new things. And so I want my beliefs to change all the time. My wife's beliefs change all the time. I think that's awesome. Our values, we are people who value fidelity. I won't cheat on you. You won't cheat on me. All right. We do value laughter and adventure. We do value curiosity over judgment. We do value hospitality. So we have a parade of wackadoos that stay at our house. Our kids are going to tell hilarious stories at our funerals about the people who came and spent the night at our place. And that's one of our core values. Now, our beliefs on who should be there, that's going to change over time. But our values are everybody's welcome at the Delony house. And so those things, yes, those things are lockstep. When I was 18, I value adventure, I followed Pantera around. I'm old now, right? So a value of adventure for me might be a really weird hunt or an amazing hike in the middle of the afternoon, right? That adventure is going to be different, but the value is still there.
Yeah. See, that reminds me, okay, I don't downhill mountain bike or surf anymore. I'll go to like the Waco surf wave here and there.
That doesn't count. There's no water in Waco.
That was the adventure but we adventure. And I've told him, like, do you see how much we adventure? We rented and remodeled an old Winnebago and went to 10 national parks and explored, jumped in the water at Glacier National Park, hiked everywhere. Like, that's the event. Like, that is like that same, those same endorphins that you get from that. And we camped. We went back to that camping.
Okay, can I tell you a secret in my life? And this is N equals 1, so I don't want to put your husband on blast here.
Okay.
I know he's editing this, so he can edit it.
No, he doesn't edit it.
Oh, he doesn't? Okay. The times in my life when I have looked at my wife either frustrated or laughingly and said, you used to ... That's almost always an indictment of the life I have chosen to live in my own skin. It is me searching for something that I'm trying to outsource to her. Why aren't you making me feel alive anymore? Why aren't you out doing this thing? And I have to exhale and say, I have to go seek that for myself. It's my job to put myself in situations where I feel alive. And I often, that may not be any other listener of this podcast or your husband, but that's usually the case with me. Now there's a few things that, man, she used to be super cool on now, but she'll say, all right, do you want dinner and you want your kids alive, or do you want me to, right? And so that's an easy trade to make. But most of the time it's me that I have fallen asleep at the wheel of my own life.
Yeah, because my response is, I don't want to do that anymore. I love what I'm doing. So, okay. So I want to talk about intimacy, and not necessarily just sexual, but intimacy in a relationship as we are together longer and longer. And of course, going back to that story of sitting on the couch, scrolling next to each other, which is one of my biggest pet peeves. Even if we like sit down and we're like, let's watch a movie on a Friday night, get some popcorn. I don't want to be scrolled next to, because sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, can you believe that? Or what? Like, I like to have conversation while, so there's presence there. So how do we, and then there could be, not saying my situation, but then there wants to be bedroom intimacy after being ignored all night. How do people like?
Not mine. I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend.
Oh, now you want my attention.
Oh, now you see. Yeah, sure. So I think almost 99% of this can be summed up. And I know when anybody says that in the modern era, I roll my eyes at them and say, yeah, whatever. But I'm pretty confident in this. The problem is pictures and words. And here's what I mean by that. We think in pictures, but we speak in words. What that means in a practical level, and this is not philosophical and it's not wizardry, right? This isn't Hogwarts. This is just simple. You say to your husband, I want to watch a movie with you. And he says, I'd love to watch a movie with you. Y'all both use the same words, watch a movie together. His picture is letting you nuzzle up against him while he checks the sports scores or scrolls Instagram. Your picture is there's no other screens. Both of his hands are around your waist. You're laughing. You're asking questions. Y'all are talking, and you're building towards something. And then you say, is tonight going to be the night? And he goes, is tonight going to be the night? Well, you have a picture for tonight's going to be the night. I go to bed at 9:00. And his picture is tonight's the night we get after it, right? And so it just is about the very un-Hollywood, unsexy, hard work of saying, I want to watch a movie with you tonight, and I want it to be no phones, and I want us just to be super present together. 99% of the time, somebody will go, oh, cool. That's awesome. Or, I don't like to have sex after you've ignored me all night with your stupid laptop. You mean if I put the laptop down, you're going to be more into it? For sure. Okay, buy a laptop. I'll leave laptop in the car. I'll leave laptop at the coffee shop on the way home from work. I'll throw the laptop out the window, right? It's just about taking that extra, what I call it, the un-Hollywood step. There is no mind reading in modern relationships. It doesn't exist. And I think that not always, there are jerks everywhere, of course. But I think most people, most of the time, are doing what they think is the right thing to do in a moment and people have different pictures of what that moment is going to feel like and look like. And it's just taking that extra step. And if you look at your husband, I'm using you just because it's an easy example.
Course.
If you look at your husband and say, hey, I really want to watch this movie together. We've been talking about it, but no phones. I just want you fully present in this thing. And he says, no, I'm not doing that. That's dumb. It's boring. Well, now y'all just lifted the lid on an actual relationship challenge y'all need to dig into. And let's have that conversation. I don't like watching movies with you. All we ever do is watch movies. I want to do these other things you never like. Let's have those conversations and not make these little things proxy wars. And I think if people will align their pictures and their words. So when we go on vacation, I'll ask my wife, what's your picture of going to see your parents look like? My picture is we're going to pull up. I'm going to grab a fishing rod and go out to the back field and go fishing. And she says, my picture is you're going to sit on the couch with us, all the old people, and we're just going to chit chat for a couple hours. Ooh. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that for a couple hours. And then Saturday morning, I'm going to wake up and then we're going to go fishing. Great. And so now we've aligned pictures. Now there's no frustration. There's no, I thought you, why don't you ever, and now we're off to the races on something that has nothing to do with what actually happened. So I think asking the question, and my wife and I actually ask that every single day of our life now. What's your picture of today look like? What's your picture of tonight look like? And there's no greater answer than, hey, what's your picture of tonight look like? And she looks and raises an eyebrow and be like, oh no, what do you want it to look like? And you're like, oh, I think about that all day.
Yeah.
Or what do you want tonight to look like? We have this and we've got this and we've got this. If you could pick up our son, I'll pick up our daughter. That's awesome. We're clarified. There's no frustration. And then we're on to the next thing.
Yeah. So it's basic communication. And
ta-da! Right.
Because
here's the deal. Here's where it's hard.
Yeah.
It goes back to that original thing I said. You have to put yourself out there. This is me. I want to spend time with you with no screens, full presence. Do you still love me? And somebody can say, no, I'd rather scroll. I get bored during your dumb movies. Oh. And that's scary. And so we hedge and then we just spend our lives frustrated.
Yeah. So at what point do you, with marriages and relationships, just anything, is a good sign that you should step into therapy? Couples therapy.
That's a great question. I think I have a rule of thumb, which is I'm not great at it, but I'm getting better. I was the guy that ruined every party. Somebody would come in and be like, hey, I've been on the vegan diet. And I'd be like, well, you know the science on that? Nobody asked. I would just start lobbing grenades at them, right? Or somebody comes in and is like, hey, I'm trying this new workout program. I'm doing this and this. And I'd be like, well, you know, that's stupid. Have you read I would just ruined parties like that. And so I'm trying to be better about, I only speak if I can be heard and I only answer questions that I'm asked. If I am doing the best I can and I'm simply unable to feel safe in my own home, if I value this relationship and neither of us are able to advance this relationship down the field, then it's time to call in a neutral third party to sit down and say, hey, we're stuck. Can you help? Can you see something that we can't see? And every football team, if you look on the field, there's 11 people on one side, 11 people on the other, but there's a whole team of people up in the top of the stadium looking down and seeing what people can't see when they're on the field. And that's what a great therapist does. And then they get down the field with you and they walk you through it and teach you new things. And so I think when you still care about the relationship and you are still both making valiant efforts to build something new together, yet it doesn't seem possible, that's when you reach out and call somebody.
Yeah. Going back to communication, I like this, creating a picture, because Bobby and I did go to therapy and we went for probably 6-7 weeks. And she was like, yeah, the issue is that you're not understanding what each other are saying. You're both on the same page in some ways, but that practice, what is it like? What did you hear her say? Or, and then you're supposed to repeat what I said. And the therapist is like, that's not what she said. That was most of our.
Well, my wife just said she hates me. And she's like, I said we're out of ice cream. Right.
Yeah. But our therapist ended up being like, you guys, I've seen some really bad stuff. You are good. Just work on your communication. I'm going to start doing that. How do you picture? That makes it easy.
What's your picture of today look like? And the other one, I'll tell you one more great marriage tip that I got from Dr. Brown, Brene Brown, is whenever I get set off. And there are just times like I'll hear something and dude, my body goes to war. Or mine actually retreats, mine runs. Is I will enter into a conversation and instead of saying, you can never use the word you when you are in a marriage dispute. The word's always I. The story I'm making up is you don't want to sleep with me anymore because you think I'm gross. That you don't want to come to my parents' house because you hate my mom and dad. The story I'm choosing to make up is, and that is a question that's an invitation. When you approach somebody and say, you never want to, that's a declaration of war. They have to defend themselves. You just threw a grenade, they got to throw one back. But when you start a conversation with I, especially, I'm making this up about us. They might say, no, I don't want to go be around your parents. They make me uncomfortable. Well, cool. But we started with humility. We started with, for lack of better terms, submissiveness and vulnerability. I'm making up this story. Am I wrong? And man, what a different way, a humble way to solve a problem. It's a terrible way to win a fight. And the old marriage counseling adage is, if you win and she loses, y'all both lost. And if she wins and he loses, y'all both lost. Like nobody wins fights in marriages. The marriage can solve problems together. Yeah.
If you were to give one top tip on a successful marriage, like the greatest thing, there's so many takeaways already on that, but like one that you feel we haven't talked about that is just life-changing.
I think that the number one tip would be just simply asking, what's your picture of today look like? That's been the biggest game changer in my home and in marriages. I'll tell you, I'm in the middle of an N=1 experiment that I'm doing that has proven radical.
Okay.
It started from two different situations, but one of them was I got a caller on my show who he said he worked really hard, always working, and he would get home. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was his wife that called. My husband worked really hard. She was a executive of some sort. Now she has 2 kids and it's just chaos. And she's also working from home. And her husband would get home and look around and see there was just mess. And she was like, I chose to keep the kids alive and I chose to keep my job and I didn't clean up. And he gets so upset. And she was calling, asking, what can she do? And I was sitting there thinking, idiot, just go home and clean up the crumbs. Like, what are you, like, you're getting home from work and clearly she's had a zonk, chaotic day. Pick up. Well, then I'd go to my house and I'd be like, well, like, where's my, what? And it felt like some jerky thing. So this is just an N=1 experiment that I started. Every morning, it takes about 3 to 5 minutes. I look around for one chore that my wife and I, like, we divide up tasks and stuff across that. What's one chore that's not usually mine that I can just knock out? And then when I get home before I go to bed, I try to find one more. Almost always, it's just grabbing the 7 dishes and the pan with oatmeal still pieces in it and just washing it. It takes literally less than 5 minutes and put it in the dishwasher and then I'm out the door. And then when I get home, usually it's picking up some sort of clothes or some sort of something and putting in the hamper, like something so small. Here's what I've found. I've been doing this for a little more than a month. I've found 2 big things. Number one, weirdly, I'm more present in my house. I have an eye for my home. I'm not just a visitor to my house. I'm a participant. The second thing is I've become overcome with gratitude for my wife in a way that I didn't. Not this. I know she's brilliant. I know she's smart and pretty and all that stuff. Just the tiny 1,000 little things that she does every day. And this just dropped my shoulders. And so that gratitude is so rich that just this morning she snapped at me. I said, are we all right? And she looked at me, but it wasn't a mad, are we all right? It was a compassion. Are we okay? And she dropped her shoulders and said, I didn't sleep good. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right. But normally I would have been like, hey, why are we fighting? And then that would have started a fight and whatever. And so it's just made me more compassionate and grateful in my own house. And it just feels like the whole wheels of the home are moving. That's 5 minutes, right? I think we look for these big, crazy, wild adventures to change our marriages. And the worst part of being married is that it's every single day. Yeah. Do this. Yeah. Get up and do clean underwear again tomorrow. Clean up and clean up the next day. Cool. what's just one 3 to 5 minute little thing I can do to make my wife's life easier? And if she thinks that way about me, my gosh, we've just changed it all. And it takes less than 10 minutes. Are you kidding me?
I mean,
and so it's just
agree.
little. It's little.
Agree. When Bobby does the dishes, my heart just warms up. I'm like, thank you. It's like little things and just little details. And it shows that you're working together.
In no Cosmo magazine. That's in no Men's Health magazine. It's all like how to get 6-pack abs so she'll for the best sex ever. Dude, just put the dishes in the dishwasher.
Yeah. Or I'll be like, I walk in to make the bed. I'm like, oh, you made the bed today. Thank you so much.
That's it. Like your whole like,
what a great day.
Yes, it's gonna be a great. Or I'll walk in and I'll open the drawer and there will just be all socks in there, and it's like, oh my gosh, my wife's the best human who's ever lived. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's this teamwork, but it's the recognition. And I don't think that can be a cognitive exercise. I think has to be an experience. If you have little kids in the house, you want to do something magic for each other, Sunday night, just grab one of the little kids and say, I got to run an errand, take your partner's car and go fill it up with gas. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you teach your kid, here's what love looks like in the grind. You don't get those weekly, why didn't you put gas in the car? And it takes 30 minutes there and back. And you put gas in the car. And my gosh, it changes that other person's entire week.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do one little thing and it just dominoes over it. So it's not looking for the big, spectacular, whatever. It's the little things that add up over time.
Well, that shows that you love. It shows love, the actions. You know, that's.
But it's like fitness, right? It's hey, you can have the coolest program, but you just got to do it every day for 20 years. Right?
Yeah.
Like I wish you didn't, but you just do. You got to keep showing up and keep exercising the next day, and then do it the next day. And so it's the same thing with being intentional about building an amazing life, and we get to choose what that looks like for us.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I want to know, you're very into fitness. What do you do? What's your routine?
Yes.
What weightlifting?
Oh, I didn't hear what you said.
What's your routine?
Oh, gosh, this morning, I've a couple of my great friends are the Mind Pump guys out in San Jose, California. And so they've got their programs and I run through them. And so, this morning was another hard squat workout and another, just a full body, get it done exercise. So I lift 3 to 4 days a week. And then I, do lots of zone 2. And then I try to get in a VO2 max blowout once a week. I don't always make it. That's usually the one I skip. That's the one I wimp out on because they're so painful and awful and they're so quick and they ruin my whole day. But those are what I try to do. And I do a lot of rucking and hiking and walking, and I try to move as much as possible. But weightlifting, lifting heavy things is a cornerstone of my week.
And what would you say to someone who's not motivated to get to move their body?
I think one of the big fallacies of the modern quote unquote mental health movement is that somehow our minds and our bodies are divorced from each other. That you can have quote unquote mental health and completely disregard your body. It's just not true. There's just simply nothing more important than exercise. I think Dr. Tia talks so eloquently about if there was a pill that did all the things exercise did, they would charge $10,000 a pill for it and everyone on earth would buy it. So it's just a thing that you got to do. And I think for some people it's getting up and going for walks, and some people that's pushing yourself real hard, but everyone's got to have some sort of movement practice in your life. There's just not, we're just at a point with the data. I think it's just dishonest and not honoring of each other if we lie to each other about that. You have to.
Yeah. If you want to decrease anxiety and depression,
that's the first line defense now.
Yep,
just moving across the world before they put you on meds. It's like, hey, let's start walking and let's get us a small exercise routine going. Yeah.
And your favorite band?
Oh, jeez, you're putting me on the spot here. My all-time favorite is probably Social Distortion.
Okay.
The great Orange County punk band.
I feel like you
think they're legends.
I feel like you and Bobby could rock out at the gym together.
Yes. I used to follow Pantera around, so I had my extreme metal phase for a while.
Yeah.
And I do love most old punk rock music, and I'm kind of obsessed with Frank Turner, who I think is the best songwriter on the planet. And Andrew Peterson's another great songwriter. But yeah, if I had to just encapsulate it all, it would probably be The Great Social Distortion.
Love it. Well, thank you, Dr.
Who's your favorite band?
Oh, mine? Oh, gosh. Don't ask me that. I'm one of those. I have so many new. I mean,
all right. Here's the big question.
I know it's not.
Here's the big question.
That's a hard question.
What's the last song you want played at your funeral?
Oh God.
I have mine. It's in my will.
Okay. First that popped in my head is Fleetwood Mac. What is it? I want to sing it. I can't remember the name. I've been afraid of
Landslide.
Landslide.
Yeah,
Thank you for not making me
beautiful
continue
song.
that.
Keep singing. Keep going.
But yeah, I love music.
It's a
too.
beautiful song.
Yeah.
Mine is Piano Man by Billy Joel. I want everyone to leave my funeral singing Piano Man. That would be so fun.
Yeah. That's amazing.
My favorite of all time.
Man, okay, I gotta find a happier song then, because that's really sad. My song.
Landslide? No, it's
No,
beautiful.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
it is.
I'm like, you may leave now.
Yeah,
To Landslide.
people would file out of your funeral very quietly. I want people still singing in the parking lot of mine.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get back to you on a new one.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to add? Where to find you? We'll put it all in the show notes.
That's what I'd say. I'm grateful for your hospitality, and I'm appreciative of your mission of just helping people heal their bodies and their minds and their hearts. It's a noble calling. I think being well is the new. Gosh, I don't mean this in a tacky way. I guess I mean this in a punk rock way. But being well and choosing wellness is the new middle finger to a world that says, "I need you sick and broken so that we can profit off your hurt." And I love people like you who are out in the world reaching a hand out and saying, "No, I'll help you pull up because I believe in you." And I just think it's right and it's holy what you're doing. So thank you for being out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And back at you. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
The big silence. The big silence.